I am Linda Brown, one of the co-chairs of WOW with Peggy Davis, who's in one of those other boxes, Peggy Wave. And for those of you who don't know, WOW is an organization within the temple that includes everyone in the temple who's over 50 and above. And we continue during COVID, and we'll continue to put on programming both by Zoom and hopefully one day in person. But we normally try and do about 2 different programs a month, plus a dine around, which is usually in someone's home for about 10 to 12 people. And they're a wonderful way to get to know other congregants and just to meet new people while doing fun things. So our next event will actually be February 17th, which will include our own Jody Berman, who will be doing our Libations and Learning, which is one of our programs that we started during Zoom, which is once a month. And we interview a different member of the temple or a staff person at the temple and learn a little bit about them, being a woman in the working world. And it's just a nice way to get to know people within our community that you wouldn't normally know. So Jody, as much as we all know what Jody does, Jody has another side to her, and that is that she loves seeing every movie that is nominated for an Academy Award, including all the documentaries, all the animation films. And she not only reviews them all, but she now has a podcast about them all. So she's going to talk to us about all the nominations for the Academy Awards and give her the predictions that she thinks will be the winners. So please join us. It's again, February 17th at 7 o'clock. It's an hour-long event. Other than that, we're just going day by day to try and see if some of the programming that we've got planned for February and March can actually happen due to the temple's COVID restrictions. So check your inboxes because we do have some great programming if we're allowed to do it. So stay tuned and hopefully we'll get to see everybody in person sooner rather than later. So stay healthy. So I'm going to pass it off to Nan and Robin. Nan Goodman and Robin Vogel, if you don't know them, they can wave, who put together this wonderful evening for us. So thank you both for doing this. I know I've been looking forward to this. We've been talking about it for a long time. So thanks for pulling it all off, and I'll let you guys take it.
Great. Well, Robin says hello. Robin, say hello.
I'll talk at the end. Nan's going to talk now.
Okay, well, I'm so thrilled this program came together so effortlessly because of my good friend, Jan Perry, who knows everybody, knows everything, and makes everything happen. So I'm going to introduce Jan, and then Jan will introduce Mercedes, who's a good friend of hers. No secrets, ladies. And then they'll dialogue for a little while, and then there'll be a Q&A. So I think we're asking, and Hannah can confirm this, asking for you to put your questions into the chat because there are a lot of us and we want to be sure that everybody gets addressed. And because we're like on 3 different screens, 3 or 4 screens, it's hard to see hands going up. So don't hesitate. And Mercedes loves questions, just a FYI, right? So, yes. So Jan may be familiar she should be familiar to all of you for a lot of reasons. She's been serving the community for over 30 years. Her passion has driven her in so many different directions, and then she amalgamates her interests from affordable housing. I'm going to read some of this because she's so amazing. I can't memorize it, all of it. So in affordable housing, continuum of care for unhousing people, urban wetlands, development, parks, restoration, and all kinds of infrastructure. Recently, there was an unfortunate vacancy in the executive director position for an organization called Shelter Partnership. It's a nonprofit organization that's involved in distributing billions of dollars of non-perishable goods. And they asked Jan to step in the interim, and she's since been made, they couldn't let go of her. You're not going anywhere. So Jan is now full-time running it as the executive director. She also serves as executive director of the Infrastructure Funding Alliance, where she recently led formation of a critical union alliance. And these alliances were essential in developing a $300 million Southern California port infrastructure initiative to leverage renewable energy sources. That's a mouthful. Additionally, a regional distribution strategy emerged for transloading the goods and movement, reducing traffic and emissions while increasing the number of jobs. I mean, do you sleep, Jan? From 2001 to for the next 12 years, you may remember that Jan served as the Los Angeles City Council person in District 9, which includes, of course, you probably know this, downtown, Little Tokyo, and South LA. The project she saw over there dramatically reshaped that whole downtown area, and she shepherded the development of nearly 6,000 units of affordable and supportive housing in that whole district. A key aspect of Jan's work as an elected official included extensive analysis of proposed budgets and financial statements, and her leadership over 12 years brought $15 billion in private investment, 25 million in new tax revenue for the city of Los Angeles, and 90,000 new jobs. Unbelievable. And just recently, a couple of years ago, Jan was appointed by Mayor Garcetti to serve as the general manager of the Los Angeles Economic and Workforce Development Department, leading an agency of 180 employees. This agency provides a broad range of programs offering assistance to businesses, job seekers, disconnected youth. All of these programs are designed to help build the local business and strengthen the workforce. Well, I could go on forever. As you can tell, she's been on the board of the South Coast Air Quality Management, a startup STEM nonprofit, Shakespeare Festival of Los Angeles, Black Women for Positive Change, Speech and Language Institute, just to name a few. But the icing on the cake, ladies, is that Jan has just thrown her hat in the ring for the 37th Congressional District seat. So you will be hearing a lot more from Jan.
Very good.
Yay! Yeah. So with that, Jan, I know I'm just skating the surface, but I'm so proud to call you a friend.
Oh,
and
you.
I turn the program over to you.
Thank you. And you know what? A lot of you don't realize it because we went into lockdown, but I've been a member of the temple, and I was able to go to a couple of services, on Wilshire. And actually I went to one night over on the west side because I live in Ladera, and that's the last time I saw any human beings. So at least in a synagogue. So, I'm a member too, and proud to be a member. But all the things that Nan said that I was able to accomplish, I have to say that I didn't do it alone. And a large part of why I was able to accomplish it is because of the woman who is speaking here tonight. And she is probably one of the most brilliant and intelligent people that I have ever had the honor of working with. And her name is Mercedes Marquez. You can see her bio in the attachment. I've known Mercedes for years. Mercedes also knew the woman who I replaced at Shelter Partnership. I met her when she was a deputy mayor for housing in the Villaraigosa administration. And then she's like me, she does two jobs at the same time. She was a deputy mayor and she was the general manager of the housing department. She was in both the Clinton administration and the Obama administration. And she is the founder of a strategic firm called Marquez Community Strategy. And she focuses on the revitalization of communities. I'm working with her on a potential project right now. So I'm excited to be able to introduce her to all of you tonight. And I hope you're going to ask her she's so smart. You better make sure you're asking her some really hard questions. Okay. So let's welcome Mercedes Marquez.
Well, yeah, please. That's a pleasure. This is such a complicated subject. And that is why it is so difficult to address in a deep way, right? Because complex issues right? Need complex solutions, unfortunately.
Well, I've got some questions for you to kick it off, sis.
Okay,
so
you go.
Let's kick it. You have this incredible background and you have been on the ground, in the field, in Washington. You're not only that, you're a civil rights lawyer. You have been an advocate. You have relationships with members of Congress and the Senate. And you've created these tools over your career that have been transformative through the power of the positions that you wielded, and you wielded them very well. But you transformed the landscape for people who needed to be housed. And I'm thinking about a few of those tools. And I want you to talk about that. I want you to talk about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and why you did that. And maybe you can talk a little bit about NSP and tell people about that too.
Okay. I think why do we, the issue of these tools and why you need these things. Government is difficult. Democracy, is not for the faint of heart. And those, right? And those of us, I've never run for elective office. I've always been an appointed official, always been a subject matter expert in the things that I do. And I've learned, I've sued government and I've been government. And I would say that one of the most difficult things is to get everybody focused when there are so many demands on time and so many issues to deal with. So one of the things that Jan, you were just talking about was the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, right? And why would we do that? It's a way to organize ourselves around a goal. It also does something else in government that is very important, and that is to seek agreement on what the rules are, to be transparent, right? So in my world of government and Jan's, right, I didn't have lunch with developers, right? I don't have dinners. I didn't go to cocktail parties. That's not what I do, right? So instead, we laid out the rules of the game. If you do this, right, and you score well, you will get dollars. And what we did is we handled public policy through money, right? So if we wanted, for instance, we wanted more affordable housing for lowest income people on a transit line because of all of the light rail being built. We made that a priority. We wanted people to go in and rehabilitate housing for the homeless rather than just build, because building is incredibly expensive and you can't build your way out of a crisis. You have to have other strategies. And by focusing in the policy that way, amazingly in a year, that's where everybody was building. Everyone now was focused on transit lines. They were, underwriting deals that were getting us to rehab. We were now focused on lower income people. And so that's why we did it. It also gave a way to organize the politicians. And when you are not the politician and you're the expert and you work at the pleasure of politicians, you have to figure out a way to speak to them, right? You have to figure out a way for them to see what's in it for them, what's in it for their constituencies, and find a way to listen. So I found that organizing the dollars, and we tried to have 100 million every year in that trust fund, and trust me, all this gray over here comes from that, right? Keeping the dollars in there and coming to the city council with a list of priorities, letting them really deal with it, kick it around, talk about it. I'll get in a car with you. Let's go look at what's going on in your district. That we were able all to get some agreement, right? And when when we were dealing with, the recession in 2008 and everything that happened, that became much more important to take a look at what was going on. And we began mapping. And that leads to the NSP program. It's called Neighborhood Stabilization Program. And when we were hit with all of these foreclosures, LA is so large that you can't see them. It's not like a much smaller city where you're driving down a boulevard, so street and you can see it in the neighborhoods. In LA, we had to do something else. So we started mapping, and we started being a leader in mapping in the country. And we were then able to produce city council district level maps, right? And city maps and then do them in time every quarter, update, so we could understand what was going on. And that led to a huge infusion. LA actually did very well, not only with formula grants, but then there was a $2 billion competition. And by that time, I had moved over to the Obama administration, and I was the Assistant Secretary for Community Planning and Development, and all that money was with me. So we did a competition meant, to be national, meant to be innovative. And because I'm proud to say we were innovative in LA, LA City won $100 million and invested all that and leveraged it. And we were able to, oh my goodness, buy debilitated, abandoned properties, focused in areas, keep rent control units, keep people from being evicted, get people into first-time ownership, make them energy efficient, change their landscapes, and actually impact the whole block. Because when the worst house on the block becomes the nicest house on the block, people start competing and they start investing in their own property. So we saw that. But these are the types of approaches that I'm hoping we're going to talk about more tonight in terms of homelessness.
I wanted you to also take a few seconds or minutes to talk about Proposition HHH.
Okay.
And I think we all understand well, you can say that, but what would you have done differently to make it more performative?
Ooh, that's ooh.
Go to it.
Yeah. Okay. I think there are some things that you can change. In hindsight, there are things that are difficult just from the point of view of what that's structured.
So somebody's asking, remind everybody.
Prop HHH.
Yeah.
Prop HHH is what we voted on in the city of Los Angeles, $1.2 billion bond for the creation, rehabilitation, purchase of land, all focused in on the homeless, right? And it's a 10-year process. The bond was for 10 years and it's just about up, I think. All the money is now, has been committed for a long, long time. And you've all maybe read in the newspaper and you've read in controllers' audits and all these things about how expensive it is, is to build affordable housing. Well, on the one hand, we shouldn't be surprised. We live in one of the, the most expensive real estate markets in the world. And so it's not like any private person that is selling land gives you a break because you're going to house the homeless, right? They still want top dollar for your property. And frankly, when you're building housing, no matter who it's for, the only real thing you can control is what you pay for land, right? Everything else, it costs the same to do drywall, it costs, right? All these things. So that's one of the reasons why it's so expensive. It's also expensive because we have lots of fees and it takes a lot of time. So some of that stuff you can't change. What you can change is what you're building and your ratio of building new to rehabilitation. There you can impact the market. I guess what I would have done differently, and these are friends, but I think what I would have done differently is had visioning, a process of visioning immediately. And I think that I would have called upon not only the housers, right, which I would have brought them in, but really organizing the city. I think I would have probably wanted a deputy mayor who was dedicated to knocking heads in the city, to making sure that this effort was right up top, because there are so many difficult, barriers in government, and you need somebody. And we're siloed, like everything is siloed, right? So the planning department is in another city council committee. The transportation department is in another city council committee. But you need them all. You need them all, the engineer somewhere else. So I think that's what I would have done, is like called a hard stop, right? And brought it all together and like not left the room until people were actually working together and you had a real work plan and real costing about what it would take. I think that's probably the big difference, probably what I would have done.
So I've got two more questions, and then we're going to go to questions from people who are attending tonight. You tell an interesting story about a conversation that we had, and you remember it much better than I do, about people having individual toilets in their units and why that's important. And why don't you share that with people?
You know, Jan will remember that when we talk about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, one of the things that I was so pleased to be able to bring to the city was that we bifurcated the fund and created a special fund only for permanent supportive housing for the homeless.
I'm going to call.
Uh-oh.
Oh, everything okay? Okay. We started a special fund. Why would we do that? Because the most expensive parts of a building are the bathrooms and the kitchens because of all the plumbing and all the special electrical and all the things that they need. So people usually permanent supportive housing is built for individuals. So smaller footprints, more units. That means more bathrooms. That means more kitchens. That means more all these other things. When we were doing so, and so that means that the underwriting is different because they also need social service space, right? Different from a regular building. We needed, right, mental health services. We needed all these things, and we wanted them in the buildings. So you're essentially giving away for services the ground floor of a building, and you have to pay for that, right? So it also makes the units more expensive, right? Because you're doing all these different things. So as we were bringing this forward, I was maybe not so popular because I wanted to move away from only buying single resident occupants hotels, SROs, which essentially mean it's a room and there's a shared bathroom down the hall. And I wanted to move away from that because our study of that, particularly, when we went to San Francisco to see what they were doing in New York, and Jen and I went, and all of us went to take a look, we found that when people did not have their own bathroom, one, there was a war among the residents, right, for all kinds of things that were happening in those bathrooms, right? A lot of illegal activity. A lot of things happening when a bathroom is public. So we wanted to change that. We also found that it mattered to people. They didn't feel if it was home if they didn't have their own bathroom like everybody else. And that meant that we had to move away from the type of investments that folks were making, great nonprofits were making, and they bought all these hotels getting ready for that. And that's not what sounded like what we had to do. So I had to talk with Jan because I didn't know how she was going to vote. Jan is someone who keeps her cards very close to her chest. And so you never really know. And it mattered. Jan was, big on the housing committee and how she voted and she, downtown was her area, Skid Row. And so how she went, really, a lot of others would vote with her. And so we had a chat right before. And I said, well, here I am. I knew she was being lobbied by those owners of those resident hotels who had plans and wanted me to fund it, how they wanted to fund it. And I wanted to make a fundamental change in our investment strategy for the city. And Jan said to me, from my point of view, most of the homeless are African-American, which is true in our city. And I think it is a racist idea to believe that they don't deserve their own bathroom. And I will tell you that I looked at her and I'm like, okay. And I walked away and just had this huge smile on my face. Like, finally, we're going to get somewhere because the pressure was so intense not to change direction. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, as a result of that change, if you go downtown now, right, you see all of these stunningly, beautifully designed architectural gems that came as a result of that change in investment strategy. So much so that we ended up on the cover of Dwell magazine. And when that happened, I bought several copies and, ran to City Hall, gave one to Antonio Villaraigosa, and he's jumping up and down. And I'm like, okay, people are noticing. Mm-hmm. People are noticing.
Yep, you were way ahead of the curve on all of that. Let me ask one more question, and then I think, Nan, we should go to people go to Q&A. Mercedes, so much has changed between when you started and now, and it's changed in probably a very bad way. The encampments have gotten more prolific. They are more dangerous. There are more of them. They're dangerous for the people who live in them and for the folks in the community. But yet there are still people who believe that people should remain in encampments for the time being. And some people will cite COVID as a reason, and other reasons like, well, they're a community and all that. And I just wanted to know what your take was on all that, if you could share it with us.
Well, my feeling is that to simply accept that we will keep, I mean, one, you can never close all the encampments because they're always open, right? You'll always have encampments, right? And so I don't want to, pretend that you can, get rid of that. You can't really. But you can make a massive dent in those encampments, right? And that is about emergency shelter. It is about taking a look, like something I would have done more, buying more hotels a long time ago, right? And making changes a long time ago. I think overall, my honest opinion is that I think it's immoral to assume encampments as a homeless containment strategy. I think it's immoral.
Absolutely. You're completely right about that. Nan, do you want me to go in the chat and read out some of the questions, or what would you like me to do?
Hannah I think Hannah's collecting questions. But before we go to questions, Mercedes, do you have other things you want to bring up and share? Because we were talking before we all went on at 7.
I do. If I could, I'd like to kind of lay out the big picture of why it's difficult, right? How we have to get a hold of it, right? And we have to understand, one, in LA, we actually have lower area median incomes than Northern California. We're poor in our county, right? So that's already a problem. Income inequality has just gotten, the gaps are larger, which means there are more places for people to fall into and become homeless. These are large, large things. I want to say to you that I believe that structural racism plays a huge role in how we got here. And why do I think that? Our laws of 100 years ago, right? They designed a platform of inequality. And they had clear results: segregation, right? Limiting access to education, to all kinds of things. And we say now, but now, that's changed. But, honestly, this is like saying you invest $1,000, right? And if you wait, that grows into a lot of money, doubling every 12 years, right? And so if you've been doing that for 200 years, think about how that $1,000 grows if you think about it as a law that's meant to separate. So now when you think about it, how big is the chasm, right? When we have this, we have a problem of a lack of capacity, right? And now we want people to have the capacity, but we don't invest in it, right? We don't understand the distance that we have created and what it takes. And so government has to be part of that, so do foundations, right? And stop having like the flavor of the week that we invest in. There are some things we have to understand. This country put it in place 100 years ago. And so it's going to take time, less time if we focus really hard. But all of those things are happening. It's also true that federal grants, the national grants that give money for homelessness and community block grants and the ways that most cities receive money, the formulas are very old and they favor the East Coast. So as the West has grown, right, they favor the East Coast under the formula. And nobody wants to tackle it. I can't even tell you how many conversations I've had about this over the years. because the Congress folks and the senators on the East Coast fight to keep that, and the West, as our population grows, there's just a lower per capita amount that we receive as a result of those formulas. Jan, when you're a congresswoman, I'm happy to chat about it.
Okay.
Right, and also that these are multi-sector issues. So just like in the city of Los Angeles, where transportation is talked about one place and health is talked about another, that is also true in the Congress, right? That HUD and transportation are together, but health is somewhere else. USDA with food stamps is somewhere else. And really the whole point is, how do you move together to weave to real solutions that get it? So for instance, here we are in LA County, right? LA County has this wonderful bond too, H, as opposed to HHH, to focus on services, but they don't invest much in housing. They do the services, right? So that means all these small communities in LA County, they have no real money and expertise, right? So I haven't seen yet the big innovation institute to bring that. We have to understand that cities also lack capacity. And in the small cities, we need a serious county effort, right? A county effort to grow that capacity and to fund it, and to understand how all these things are mixed. So it is difficult for all of these reasons. Government can't do it all. It requires, but they could do a lot if they worked better, both federal, state, and local, and really declare a state of emergency, which would open up a lot of waivers, right? It would mean looking at the city differently. For instance, when we had the emergency of the foreclosures, I asked the city council right before I left to go to Obama to allow me to create a special, what's called the CHODO, right? A community housing development organization that would focus only on the money that the city was receiving from the federal government foreclosures, ended up being about $150 million, and to give them a clear set of what they had to achieve, right? And if they were to do that, I needed the city council to back off all of the process, right? And if we were in line with what they agreed as what the rules were and what we were trying to do, that we could expedite. And they did that, right? So we were able to purchase rapidly. We were able to turn it over rapidly. We were able to hold property. And those are the types of things that I think would be required here.
Hey, Mercedes, quick question. Why do you think people in elected office are so hesitant to declare a state of emergency like the situation that we're in now?
Well, I mean, you could answer that better than me, but
I would have declared one, although I wouldn't have let it get that far. So
I know you would have. I think there's a couple of things. I think one, when you declare a state of emergency politically, you're also saying we have failed in the past, and nobody wants that, right? Politically. Yeah. I think also, particularly in a city like ours, where the city council has so much power, right? If you declare a state of emergency, you're going to have to loosen your grip on your ability to stop every decision, right? To get what you want, or to stop it. And I think that that's really important, that we open it up, that you bring more experts in, right? That you make decisions in a different way.
Right. You're absolutely right. Thank you. Hannah, do you want to start taking Q&A from people who are watching? Let's see. Okay, well, let's see. I can read out a couple of the questions. Question from Pamela: what do you think is the best idea to help people who have mental health issues and are unhoused? And do any of the ideas seem viable to you?
Well, I think for people that are mentally ill, this idea of obviously cross-sector work, dual diagnosis work, is key, right? And I know that you've had Sarah Gisso come and speak with you before, a dear, dear friend. And so I know that she's talked to you about this. I do feel that for this issue of mental illness, which is a growing number of people, right, are in this process, you know, the LA County Jail and every county jail in the country has an unbelievable number of inmates that are there because of mental illness, crimes because of their, you know, because of their health status, and they're being held there without drugs. There's no real, you know, no real work done that you would say at scale that is assessing them while they're there and getting them ready for release, right? We don't have a clear connection between jail and permanent supportive housing or emergency shelter when you get out. So, you know, adios and back on the street and back to the same problem. So
we'll see you again in a few days.
Again in a few days. So right, or in the emergency room, or right. So I think that we would really need to have dedicated units like a hotel, right? Where we have set aside units for that, where we're working across system, both city and county, right? Both health services, you know, and jail services to ensure that on the one hand. And I also think that we need to invest much, much more, and even in peer review of peers, you know, like on Skid Row, going out to help recruit other folks on Skid Row who can attach so that there'll be a trust factor. I think there's just so much more. The other thing also is clearly true is adding to the police, right? Not as police officers, but adding to the way that we work together on social services, social workers, mental health professionals to go out on these calls, right? Particularly in Skid Row, when they need a de-escalation and they need to be brought in. And then ultimately, we have to do something about the inability of families like Sarah's to help to find a real space for their relative, to contain them and get them the meds and the help that they need. So it's, again, that's our problem. All these very complicated problems require cross-sector solutions.
So Mercedes, you've been building housing for quite a while, and you did some iconic and landmark projects and going into neighborhoods that historically had been left behind or neglected. What kind of tactics or techniques did you use to educate people so that they would be more welcoming to affordable housing rather than opposing it?
Well, you know, part of that is something we were talking about just a little bit ago, and that is about design, right? You can design an ugly, really expensive building as well as an ugly, more affordable building, right? Ugly is ugly, right? The real shift, right, is about the finishes inside. That's where the money really source. You know, what kind of, countertops, right? How many cuts on that marble or other stone versus one big piece. That's where the money really adds up. But part of what we did was actually, I would do slide presentations and have people vote, which is the affordable housing. And we would lay out the buildings and we lay out interiors and people would vote. And you'd be shocked how many times they chose the market rate property as the affordable property. And we did that in LA City, is focus much more on design to make it work, right? Look at density and get it on transit so that you get, more than one thing, right? I also had a rule in the housing department. I would tell my staff when I came back after Obama to be the deputy mayor, I would say to them, look, just having housing on a transit stop, that is like so 90s, right? We have to do so much more than that. So we ended up doing a study of looking at the line and understanding all of the city facilities or WIC programs, anything that the city was funding, were they rented or were those in buildings that we owned? And if they were rented, when did those leases expire? And how could we get them closer to the transit stop or in the housing itself, right? How did we build community? Things like that. You're on mute, Jen.
I got to unmute. Okay, hold on. Let me read it out to you. It is, you referenced giving families the ability to help their unhoused mentally ill relatives. And the question is this currently feasible without amending 5150?
Really tough. Really tough. I mean, you've heard, I don't know how many of you saw the article recently about the follow-up to Sarah's brother, right? And how was she able to do it, right? By leaving him in jail, right? He's in jail right now, right? By leaving him in jail until they could find a place that could take him. And that's the other problem. There aren't enough facilities. That is not about emergency housing. There aren't enough beds in mental health facilities to take them. So I think if we had more facilities, you could make a much stronger argument, right, about them being able to take in, and also what kind of things do you need in those facilities, right? I've thought some with others about facilities for people that are already in prison, mental health facilities for people who are already in prison, and other kind of health facilities to get them out and get them ready to be released, because then we're just releasing people who are really angry and really terrified back into society. So it's also, where do you get them in the stream, right? Which is part of the problem of having waited so long, right? I mean, we waited till it's the most expensive thing. I can tell you when I went into the Obama administration, my job was Assistant Secretary for Community Planning and Development. So I was responsible for all of the country's disaster relief funds, for the homeless money, for all of the urban money, for a lot of the stuff that came out of the recession. It was a lot of money. It was like $50 billion in one shot. And I will tell you that one of the national leaders on homelessness came to see me, who I already knew her. And she told me that what she wanted to do was to set Los Angeles aside as an outlier and take them out of the statistics, because as a nation, we were making so much more progress in so many other cities on homelessness, and Los Angeles wasn't. I mean, I said no, and said, what more we can do, and came to LA with her and started moving, trying to do more. But that is how bad the situation is in Los Angeles was versus other places, that they would actually, with complete seriousness, tell me that they wanted to remove Los Angeles from all of the data keeping, because LA was making, everybody look so bad. And it's also because we have so many homeless, right?
Right. And just to be clear, 5150 is a 72-hour psychiatric hold.
Right.
Yes. So
right. So that's what's happening. People are going to jail, and people are trying to figure out how to work that through the criminal justice system as they speak to lawyers and sentencing and probation and all these other things. They're trying to use that system to get them into facilities rather than through the psychiatric hold.
Can you talk just a little bit about Section 8 housing?
Well,
why it's so backlogged, and what your thoughts are about how to fix that system?
Well, let's talk about what Section 8. Section 8 housing refers to a federal housing program where low-income individuals, right? But low-income, usually people at, not more than 30 to 40% of area median income and below, that's who's eligible, that they receive a voucher themselves, or a project can receive a voucher to house people at that level. And then different housing authorities, so public housing authorities, have the responsibility for issuing them. And depending on where you are, play more or less of a role in getting that housing ready, right? Or in helping you find it. Los Angeles is a city that has a lot of Section 8 housing, because we did not build as a city way back, when decades ago, we didn't build a lot of public housing. The community kept public housing out. So we have a lot more Section 8 housing. It overall is one of the more effective housing programs, because, you deal with private landlords, right, to do it. You need a lot more of it, right? You need a lot more of it. But I also think that in order to break into other neighborhoods, I think that public housing, or whoever would run it, didn't have to be, people could convince me that others should run it. I think you need to do things to to help people maintain it. So for instance, if they're renting a house, right, that poor family doesn't have the money for a lawnmower, right? So, you know, they might maintain the house well, but they can't do all of the landscaping. They can't do all that. I remember I've had conversations with folks in public housing here in LA and said, I think you should start a kind of management company that helps either lend tools or just outright pays for landscaping and all those other types of things, so that they would be more readily accepted in the neighborhoods because they don't have the dollars to keep that going. I think I'd also be willing to pay landlords, right, to do more, to do more. So Section 8 works. You need a lot more of it than we have. And we also have to be willing to step up and just buy buildings, right? Not just have affordable housing developers come to us with a piece of land, which is always more and more difficult in Los Angeles. So one of the other reasons that housing is expensive is because people now have to buy the most expensive piece. If you have to buy land that's on a hill because everything else that was flat was already taken and sold, yes. So that means that now the affordable housing is buying the most expensive piece because they weren't there. And for me, we should be, as a city, being part of buying the land, but we don't have that much anymore, right? So we have to be willing to buy buildings and to, put out the buildings as our contribution, not just raw land.
So why don't we take this in a direction where we can help people feel empowered? What advice would you give to the folks who are here tonight about how they could actually do something proactive and to be helpful in moving the needle on housing people in the right direction?
Well, I think as an issue of civic engagement, I think it is important to participate across communities, right? So that to the degree that you all could be involved with other movements, right, in neighborhoods, right, at a level of how can we be allies to advocate together. I think it would be important to perhaps be willing to work with a credible developer to sponsor housing in your own neighborhoods, to figure out how you do that well. There are many churches, particularly in South Los Angeles, that use land that they have, right, to build housing. And for those churches, it's a decision. Are you being mission-based or is it about making money? And often poor churches want to do both. And so it's a difficult choice. I can only see like half of a question on the screen and then it goes away. But I saw someone saying, well, what kind of organizations? Right?
Mm-hmm.
There are, Los Angeles is blessed in that we have many credible, great, affordable housing developers that are both nonprofits and are for-profits that know what they're doing, right? So it wouldn't be bad, I would say, as a community to invite some if you wanted to. Jen and I could both help you tell you
right.
who's good, right? To meet them and have a sense of that. I see something from Terry Hertz. I work with somebody.
Yeah,
Ben is somebody.
Ben is community housing.
I know him well.
Yeah.
They're among the good guys.
Yeah, and another person commented in the chat that there was a particular church building luxury housing in down Midtown Los Angeles, and I don't know if you have a comment on that, but
I just think that taking a stand by inviting them in with spectacular services. One of the most difficult things for folks that build housing to maintain is the services component. Mm-hmm. And for it to be rich enough, right? And, rich enough in terms of enough long-term, stay deep, right? And understand that people didn't just get here. Jen and I, when we were in New York years ago, we heard a lecture from somebody there and they broke down the homeless. This is a long time ago, but they broke down the homeless in the cannots the have-nots and the will-nots. And we can make a huge effort with the have-nots and the can-nots, right? And a lot of our mentally ill brothers and sisters are the can-nots. And we just have to understand that in an enlightened society, we have to understand that we have to take care of them. And there's nothing they can do. We have to take care of them. And starting there would be a good thing with deep reach services and the right kind of buildings. And there are a lot of folks that can tour a building and can decide fairly quickly if it can be converted to the right thing. Mm-hmm. There are real ways to do that.
I mean, one of the most exceptional projects that I think that we've seen and that we probably both worked on at different points was done by Skid Row Housing Trust, where they had an existing county building and they used that as a platform. And then they took modular units and attached it to the platform, and it cut the cost per square foot down, but it also cut the construction time down. So it got done door to door in about 2 years, which is unheard of because most projects usually take about 5 years.
That's right.
To ribbon cutting. And it's got probably 100 plus people living in there who face any number of not only physical medical challenges, but mental health issues too. Living quietly, it's an oasis. And they've started to create business incubators so that the residents can get job skills. Like they have a business incubator for doing mosaics, and they sell their mosaics. They take broken tiles and they make picture frames and, vases. And I know they had talked about starting a denim incubator, but they're trying to train their clients on upskilling them or job skilling them so that they can survive and thrive.
I am proud to say that that's one of the deals that I funded before I left to go to Obama. And when I was traveling here with Sean Donovan, who was the HUD secretary, we came to the groundbreaking. Mm-hmm. And so that's, what innovation can do. And part of what the city can do is clear land for that. Take a look at what properties should be purchased that work for these types of things. And look at what happened with Skid Row Housing Trust. I mean, amazingly, Skid Row Housing Trust was one of the groups that was the most angry at me when I wanted to change the funding so that they couldn't do SRO housing anymore, right? Mm-hmm. And their executive director, who's now retired, told me I changed his life by making it unfeasible for him to do what he was doing before. He now was one of the buildings that was in Dwell magazine for design. So you never know. Old dogs can learn new tricks.
That's right. One of the ladies mentioned in the chat that she and her husband work with a community of friends and would welcome more people to learn about them. So
fabulous organization.
They are fabulous. Mercedes, do you know, or can you talk comfortably about what's going on over at the Veterans Administration?
I haven't looked at it in a long time, but wow. I've toured there. And, in some ways they lost a lot of ground because of community, anxiety and being threatened in every way possible to stop that. I spoke to community of friends and others about all those things going on in the veterans. There were some great programs there already for veterans housing. And to me, that was just a political, we talked about structural racism, right? We've talked about discrimination. Well, hello, honestly, just saying no with such enormous amount of acreage when there was room for everybody, I thought was just unconscionable. What happens? Everything now just costs more. So, we'll see how they pull it out. But that was a big scare. And I mean, I talked to the nonprofits involved at the time. Oh my. It's one of those, NIMBY, not in my backyard situations. And it's, it's not just about, oh, we don't want poor people, we don't want crazy people. No, it's also, we don't want people of color, we don't want all this stuff. And to say that it's not true is true. I mean, that's, just the reality. It's true.
So we have said when Sarah came on, she came on with Steve Peck from God, I'm blanking on the name, the large veterans organization, and they have moved people inside the fence, and some of the housing is already under construction. Somebody in the chat mentions that those living inside the fence are willing to abide by the no alcohol and drugs policy, and those outside of the fence are not willing. And that's probably true. I have no way of confirming that, but if you're outside of the fence, then you're on your own. And that's the reality.
Right. Well, and part of that is that, there's this thing called housing first, right? Which doesn't require people to commit in that way to no drugs, no alcohol policy. You take them where you are, right? And you provide all those services to figure out why they are. But this gets to like the levels of the cannots, right? The folks who could abide by that policy, right? We'll see. I have to say, an addict is an addict, and people can say a lot of things about what they want to do, but if you don't really deal hardcore on that addiction, there will be problems, right? If they're not getting the exact kind of mental health work they need, right? Help they need, there will be that. Including, I saw someone say only veterans. Yes. Hello, PTSD, right? Mm-hmm. And right, they're self-medicating, right, with alcohol and drugs, right? So that is about, really getting them all those services that they need to help them abide. And what are we going to do when they fall back for a bit? Are they going to lose their housing after having made that pledge, even though they've, made a lot of progress because their daughter died and they freaked out? I mean, what are we going to do? So that is why those policies of just saying, I'm pledging my life away, I'll never do this, and you're an addict, that's very tough.
Well, I see the emergence of different models. The Union Rescue Mission is building a campus in the county portion in South Los Angeles, where not only will they have the housing on site, but it will be a large campus. They'll have a warehouse with goods to supply people, clothing and things that they need. But they'll also have the services on site, and they'll have different levels of housing depending on what stage of recovery people are in. So they'll have a community where they can kind of stay in place for a while and move from one level to the next, and then not have to worry so much or not be triggered because they fell out of the program and then they get tossed out.
I think that's really very important, because it's not just that they can move up, they can also move back down to a level of higher supervision, right? And a higher, let's say a higher touch. I think that's important. We have to know that our folks, we're going to have to help them for a long, long time.
Right. There's a mention here of the Karsh Center working with the West LA Veterans Administration, and tremendous accomplishments and contemplating building over the next 5 years. And a clarification, the Community of Friends is not a Quaker organization. Everyone can sign up for the Homelessness Count, February 22nd through the 24th. And it's at www.theycountwillyou.org. They had to cancel the count before because of the numbers going up on Omicron.
Bless you.
So let's hope that the numbers are back down in February.
Salud.
Okay. Gracias. Between me sneezing and my dog, it's been an exciting evening. I've tried to cover him up. Thank you, Jody. Are there any other questions? Any other questions?
Jan, can you talk about what people do during the homeless count? I think we've had some people who are open to the idea, but maybe reluctant for the safety sense of, whatever. Can you just describe what the activity is?
Okay, Mercedes, maybe you can comment on that too. You've done one, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay. You want to go first? Then I'll go second.
Well, I mean, basically they, they do it all right. They try to do it all over a couple of days. You're broken up into teams and you're broken up into sectors of the city, right? So it is like all over, anywhere where there's a congregation of homeless, encampments, under bridges, Skid Row too, but not only Skid Row, right?
Yeah.
Neighborhoods. So I live in Glassell Park, Eagle Rock. And so they're finding, that there are lots of hidden encampments by the 110. So you do that. And you approach them. You don't go alone, right? It's in a team. And you approach people and basically you're taking a survey, right? Mm-hmm. Right now there's COVID. It's, I to say that it's not a little scary, I would say that it is a little scary. I mean, yeah. I don't want to underplay it. It's scary, right? Yeah. In that sense, I never experienced any like physical danger though, and that you don't there because mainly in big places, big encampments, Skid Row, they know you're coming, right? They've already been told because of other services that it's time for the homeless count. Many of them have been homeless for a long time. They know you're coming. So it's not like they're not going to speak to you and you're in teams. You're not alone. You're given a clipboard. You have a survey, you fill it out, right? You turn it in. But there is COVID.
There's one person commented in the chat that you don't go out and talk to people, that you have you count them. And that's actually true. Now, the last time I did it, I went into the middle of MacArthur Park and we had trucks filled to the ceiling with hygiene kits. And of course, this is way before COVID or anything like that. So, we had tables set up and people lined up, and that once they were counted, they got a hygiene kit, and it was astonishing. A lot of people don't know there's actually a tunnel under the lake in MacArthur Park, and people were lined up from one end of the tunnel to the other because they were so desperate to get hygiene kits. I had a Yukon that was filled and my truck was empty by the time that I left. It was so empty that I was actually calling for backup because we needed more hygiene kits. Yeah. So people will show up and want to be counted, especially when there's an incentive. Now that was a unique situation. Other ways to count people, you call it a bed census, where you get an assignment to go to places where people are running board and care or, bed facilities. Say, how many beds do you have and how many of them are filled tonight? And that's quick and you don't have a lot of interaction, but right. Just depends on what your comfort level is in terms of participating. But,
of course, Jen and I were out given who we are, we're out in the street.
Yeah, we were in the middle of it. And then one of the participants tonight said to encourages people to sign up in your neighborhood, which is a great idea because I
like that.
Yeah, your neighborhood. You already know your neighborhood. So, you're not wandering around trying to figure it out. You and I have seen some pretty awful things. People living behind trash dumpsters, people living in outflow sewers over on the east side. I hired people who were formerly homeless to go and find people who were homeless because they would know where to look better than anyone. People living in the Tahunga Wash.
Oh God, yes,
in the high grass. People living around the Hanson Dam, again, hiding in plain sight. So it's a huge undertaking, but if you can participate, let's see. And then one of the ladies commented that University Campus is one of the hubs, I guess, for organizing the count. So go to the website. It's in the chat again, and it's let me see, where did I put it? I think I said it once. Well, it's in the chat. I think you guys can see it, and there will be a lot of advertising about it. Oh yeah, theycountwillyou.org. I don't have any more questions in here. So Mercedes, thank you so much. You were just absolutely stupendous and glorious and informative. And
well, I hope so. I mean, not glorious and stupendous, but informative. That, it's complicated and it's painful. I'm I really do hope that you all can figure out who you could ally with, your people of influence, thank goodness, and your women of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And figuring out, you know, like community of friends, like others that you already have contacts with, how can you help them build, right? Who else do you know that could, you know, do something, you know, really big, because you can, by aligning yourself with others. And I will pray that you do that.
Thank you so much. There are some questions in the chat for the group to handle, but I want to thank you so much, and looking forward to continuing to work with you. And thank you to the Women of Wilshire. And I'm proud to be a member. One of the reasons I joined this temple is because of the amount of social services that they do provide to the community in which they are situated. And even though they have they have 3 campuses now, but they never left the middle of the city. They never left the city, on Wilshire. They never left that site, and they never abandoned it. And they never walked away from it. And that makes me proud. So thank you very much, Mercedes.
You're welcome. A pleasure, really, for me.
And Mercedes, I want to thank you both. Nan really worked hard on orchestrating this event tonight. It's a crisis that we're all concerned about. A lot of us don't know where to go and what to do, but the insight you gave, both of you, is really jaw-dropping. Of course, we want to thank Mercedes, and I'm going to try to pronounce the name of the organization we're making a donation to. Is it Inquilinos?
Inquilinos Unidos.
Thank you. You
In
help.
Spanish, it means Tenants United. And they're on the front line of working with some of the poorest tenants in the city. A lot of it done with peer work, long-term organization.
Great.
Thank you very much.
It's our pleasure. And I want to thank Linda Brown and Peggy Davis. It's an organization, wow, that we really love. And it's a lot of hard work. And the people behind that who really back us up is Hannah Gohl and Jody Berman. So thank you all for helping and supporting and bringing this in-depth conversation.
An absolute pleasure. Bid you good night.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Unmute so you can they can hear you clapping.
Bye-bye, you all.
Thank
Good
you
night,
so
everybody.
much.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
It was
Yeah,
fabulous.
thank you for bringing Mercedes. That was amazing.
Yeah, she is amazing, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's something else. You can ask her anything and she can always answer it in
Yeah.
depth.
Yeah.
Wait, Jan, tell us again where you're running, because we want to support you.
Oh, great. Okay, so this is really interesting. So I was waiting for the maps to be finalized at the end of 2021. And I live in Ladera, but as you know, I used to represent a large portion of downtown and South LA. So now the district goes all the way from Ladera from Sepulveda. It stays south of Olympic and San Vicente. It actually, they left Hillcrest Country Club in it, which is really odd. But they cut out Cheviot Hills, and they cut out Westchester. So it goes across Pico, Robertson, Pico, Fairfax, the Mid-City area, south of Koreatown, West Adams, South LA, goes all the way down to the northern tip of Watts. And here's the kicker. From Normandy going east, all the way over to 7th and Alameda, and then all the way down to like 82nd Street, that's all my former council district. So
sorry, I missed that. What are you running for?
Congress.
Really?
Yeah, the 37th.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So when I saw the alignment of my former council district inside of this congressional district, I thought, okay, that's a sign that the alignment, because I've been waiting for an alignment, and this is a very good alignment for me in terms of being successful. So
exciting.
Yeah.
And it's south of Olympic?
It cuts across San Vicente when you're going through like Pico Robertson and that area. And as soon as you get over to like around La Cienega, it starts to go stay south of Olympic.
Oh, Jan, I can definitely help. I live in the middle there. So.
Oh, good. Okay, great.
I would love to work.
Okay. Just text me.
I'll find you.
You know how to find me. But yeah, and Nan knows how to find me too.
Wow, so that's kind of the district that, yeah, I'm trying to think of the rejiggering and how that happened.
Yeah, gerrymandering. It's called gerrymandering.
I know rejiggering.
But
so, Anne, you'll get the privilege of walking with Jan, the neighborhood that's most familiar to you.
Yeah, I love to walk, and I'll even give you a K95. What is it? KN95. I have. Yeah, I got that.
I foresee a hike with Jan Perry.
Yeah.
A Women of Wilshire hike with Jan.
Yeah. Love that.
Love it.
I like to exercise, and I would be. Let's see. I don't play identity politics, but I would be the only Black Jewish woman in the race. So,
well, you've got our support.
Try to top that one, okay? Okay. So,
and you're the only one that we know and love, so that's all that matters, really.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Very exciting, really.
So I'm excited, and let's keep talking. And the election day is June the 7th, so it's coming up fast.
Oh.
And
June 7th?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And
everybody votes by mail now, so the ballots will drop before then. So actually, when the ballots drop, that's election day. So my website should be live by next week. We put the donate button in today, and it's called janperry.org. And the reason we said janperry.org is because more people can find me when you do that, And then you can just call me on the phone.
On a Jan Perry note, though, I just want to say, when on another libations event, Jan's got a very compelling life story.
Yes.
So, we already did Jan. Jan's already been. She was one of our first libations.
Where were you, Nan?
Where was
Nan
I?
and I were out walking, and I was telling her some stories as we were walking through Culver City. So I probably told her stories that I never told anybody else.
Okay, never mind. My lips are sealed.
That's right. No, it's fine. I don't care. If I told you, it's fine. All right.
Thanks. Thanks.
All right. Get some rest, everybody. Thank you.
I think we were so focused on the city.
So great. Thank you,
Robin and Nan.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you,
everybody.
You're great. Okay, thanks.
Bye, Jody.
Bye.
Hi, good to see all of you.
Bye,
Seeing your faces.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
You're great. Okay, thanks.
Bye, Jody.
Bye.
Hi, good to see all of you.
Bye,
Seeing your faces.
Thank you.
You're great. Okay, thanks.
Hi, good to see all of you. Seeing your faces. Oh my goodness. Hannah, your hair looks so cute.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I'm going back.
On a TV show, some girl like wearing her hair like that, and I was like, I want to try.
Taking Lucy home.
Except what's really funny is I took my new California ID with my hair like this, and it's a really funny picture on an ID to have. Little bump.
Do you remember the show Avatar, the animated show Avatar? That's how he wore his hair. Sorry.
You know what? It's coming out soon. It's going to be amazing. The next Avatar, right? It's coming out soon.
Avatar 2. Yeah, it's coming.
Oh,
the
animated series?
No, I think the movie. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, that was the one. All right, bye guys. Thank you for this.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Where do I get out?